Midweek Murders contains graphic and explicit content. Listener discretion is advised.
I went to do my second vaccination, as you know, and I got there, and obviously I was stressed and anxious about the whole procedure, even though I've done it before.
That doesn't sound like you.
And then I went in, and they were like, okay, what's your name? And I had to say my name, and I had to spell my last name, as I always have to, because, nobody can spell my last name for some reason. And then I went to sit down, and then I was like pulling up my phone. They were like, okay, Sandra, you're next. I was like, okay. Went up, went to the guy, and he asked me loads of questions. And he was like, have you been participating in a COVID trial? I was like, no. He was like, okay. And then he asked me another question. And then he was like, have you participated in a trial for COVID? I was like, no, because I thought that I had misheard him because, not that great at listening when I'm stressed. And he was like, oh, I've already asked you that question. I was like, yes. And then I started laughing, as you do. And then he didn't laugh at all. And I just felt mean. I was like, I didn't mean to laugh at you, mate. I didn't say that. But I was like, oh, whoops. And then he was like, okay, you can sit in that chair. I was like, all right. After talking to someone else, he ran over to me and he was like, said something really quiet. I was like, I'm sorry, excuse me. And he was like, are you or could you be pregnant? So he had forgotten to ask me that when he was doing his questions, and then he didn't want to say it loudly so that people could hear in the room.
And then you had to make him do it anyway.
I was like, no. He was like, okay. And then I got called in to this vaccination guy, and he was like, okay, so what's your name? I was like, Sandra, and then I said my last name, and then I was 1 inch away from spelling my last name, but I didn't. He was like, okay, hi, I'm Jack. I didn't say it like, oh, my name is this. I just said like my first and last name really clearly. And then he was like, oh, nice to meet you. And I didn't answer him. And then when the meaning of his words sank in, I was like, oh shit, I'm supposed to answer this. But then it was too late. So I just sat there and it was just disturbingly quiet.
Probably like gone home and been like, yeah, I had this woman come into the vaccination centre today. I'm not sure she was all there. I said, hey, I'm Jack. What's your name? And she was like, Sandra.
Sandra.
And then I asked how her day was, and she just completely blanked me.
It would have been funny if I spelled my last name as well. Oh god, it was it was just awkward galore. But, I got my vaccination. I had my little card that he filled in. I was like, yes, at least I did something right. And then he sent me on my way. And then I accidentally started to exit through the wrong direction.
What a disaster.
It was fine. I felt like it wasn't the worst I've done with awkward situations, but it wasn't my best. Oh god. Yeah, it was weird. I feel bad for the guy who forgot to ask me the pregnant question and then felt like he had to stage whisper it to me. Ah. Are you ready for the case?
I was born ready.
Get down to business.
Business.
It's Wednesday, which means that it's time to talk about crime. You're listening to Midweek Murders, and I'm your host, Sandra.
And I'm your host, Joe.
Cool beans. This week, we're going to talk about the murder of Sandra Rivet. I got my information from Wikipedia, an article in Business Insider by James Paisley, and a blog post on crimereads.com by Flynn Berry.
We call him Fliz. Oh, Fliz Bez. Oh, so sorry. I was just waiting for that tumbleweed to pass before I carried on with the rest of my sentence. I got my information from Wikipedia and a website called Medium.
Oh, yes, I've read loads of crime articles on there.
There seemed to be a very good book about this case that is pretty much all of the Wikipedia references, but it wasn't available as an ebook, so I couldn't read it.
Okay. So at approximately 11:30 on the 7th of November 1974, the 7th Earl of Lucan... Wait, is Lucan a place?
I don't know.
Well,
I'm Swedish.
no, silly, that's me. I thought you would know. I don't know either. But being British, you should fucking know. No, you shouldn't, because it doesn't pertain to us, because we're peasants, simple folk. Yeah, so the seventh the seventh Earl of the seventh Earl of Lucan, Richard John Bingham, more commonly referred to as Lord Lucan, arrived at his friend's house in Sussex, seemingly distraught. Lord Lucan explained to his friend that his nanny, 29-year-old Sandra Rivet, was dead, and that he was certain his wife would frame him for the murder. He told his friend that he was going to, quote, lie doggo, unquote, which I had no idea what that meant. I had to Google it. Do you know what it means? It means like...
Yeah, I'd never heard of it. No.
That's so strange.
I'd imagine lay low.
Yeah, it is lay low. Doesn't make sense to me.
Also, Lucan is an Irish peerage. It's a place in Dublin.
Oh, okay. At his friend's house, he wrote a number of letters, one of them stating that I have had a traumatic night of unbelievable coincidence. But more than an hour before this, Lord Lucan's wife, Lady Veronica, had stumbled into a pub down the road from her flat in London, covered in blood. She shouted, help me, I've just escaped from being murdered. And my children, he's murdered my nanny. She had been viciously beaten and told responding police that she had gone down to the basement of her flat looking for Sandra, as she had been wondering why her cup of tea was taking so long. I just found that ridiculous and horrible.
Why horrible?
It's such a upper class thing to do. Like, why is my tea taking so long?
It's more because the nanny had come in and offered her a cup of tea.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
She'd said yes, and then 10 minutes later it still hadn't turned up. You'd get a bit suspicious, wouldn't you? It's not like, make me a tea. Where's my tea?
I would just go and make my own cup of tea, but the kitchen was in the basement, so...
Not if someone had offered to make you a cup of tea, though.
Yeah, I would.
That would be rude.
Would it?
Yeah.
Why?
Because someone's offered to do you a favour of making you a cup of tea, and by you going to make your own one, you've essentially said, fuck you, you can't do it within my time frame, I guess I'll just do it myself.
Really? I didn't know that's how manners worked. In the basement, Veronica had been hit over the head with a lead pipe, but escaped her attacker by grabbing his balls and squeezing. She informed them, the police that is, that the perpetrator was her husband. So John and Veronica had married in 1963 after meeting at a golf club function attended by prominent figures in London's high society. Veronica worked as a model and secretary before this, and John had squandered his money as a professional backgammon gambler, ironically earning him the nickname Lucky Lucan.
I think you mean backgammon.
Oh, is it backgammon?
Yeah, backgammon and blackjack.
Oh, shit! And the nickname wasn't ironically given to him. It's just ironic that he was called Lucky Lucan and he was highly in debt. He was described as a shy man with a luxuriant guardsman's mustache and had declined an offer to be screen tested for the role of James Bond, even though he looks like a horse.
I mean, it did look like a fabulous moustache.
He looked very, very unattractive, but maybe that's just me. Maybe standards of beauty have changed since the 1970s. But who was James Bond in the 1970s? Wasn't Sean Connery James Bond in the 1970s?
I don't know.
He was a way more attractive man.
Sean Connery was the 60s.
Oh, yeah, you're right, but between 60s and 80s. So he was Bond a very long time. Good on him. When the couple got married, John received a marriage settlement from his father, which he used to repay some of his debts and to buy the flat in London. 2 months after the wedding, his father died of a stroke, leaving him with multiple titles, Earl of Lucan being one of them, and a £250,000 inheritance, which doesn't sound like that much now, but it was a lot.
Fuck off, doesn't it?
Which doesn't sound like millions and millions, but it was probably millions and millions. Following the births. I can't say it quickly. Births. No. Following the births of their second and third child, Veronica suffered from postpartum depression. John tried to have her committed to a psychiatric clinic, but she refused and was instead given antidepressants and regular visits by a psychiatrist, which seems much more reasonable. In 1972, John moved out of the family's flat and bought a personal one. He started trying to get sole custody of his children after this, regularly spying on them and hiring private investigators, as well as trying to find a doctor who would testify for him at court. Although several, if not all, of the doctors he spoke to did not agree with his narrative of her having gone mad, as he put it, but tried to explain to him that she was just suffering from postpartum and was depressed. John would badmouth his wife to his friends, saying that nobody would work for her and that she would fire all of her nannies. One of the nannies who had worked for the family stated that Veronica had confided in her that John had once pushed her down the stairs and that she feared for her life. When the trial started for custody over the children, Veronica successfully proved that she wasn't insane by checking herself into a psychiatric facility and the doctors testifying on her behalf. John's behavior towards Veronica was questioned at the trial, and the judge awarded full custody to Veronica with visitation rights for John, because he was an abusive asshole, which did come up in court, and she wasn't insane. She was just depressed. You can probably tell that I don't like him that much.
I think you need to learn to respect your superiors.
After the trial, John began to act even more crazy, recording Veronica's phone calls, and he also regularly called the flat in increasingly stalkerish behavior. He would call and ask for people who didn't live there, and he would call and breathe heavily on the phone, which is super creepy and definitely insane. He went further and further into debt following the custody trial and started drinking excessively, telling his friends that he would murder his wife. He said that it would save him from bankruptcy and that he would never be caught. He also started borrowing large amounts of money from friends and started borrowing money from other rich people places. I don't know. It had a long list of he applied for this trust, he borrowed money from a finance guy. I don't know. It just sounded completely unrelatable. And they all were like, yeah, fine, take all of our money. Not all of their money, obviously, because they're rich. But they were like, yeah, thousands of pounds, fine. Just take it. Even though you're talking about murdering your wife, that's fine. And it also mostly went to his gambling problem, obviously.
Duh.
You don't feel emotions thinking about this?
Could have just left that in the first half.
Yes, I could have. I'm so incensed by oh, you don't have any money because you're squandering all of it on your gambling addiction. Well, here's thousands and thousands of more money, even though you're insane and talking about murdering your wife.
Yeah, but he's a lord.
Yeah, that does seem to open doors that we can only dream about. So Sandra Rivet started working for Veronica in 1974. They seemed to have a good relationship. I think Sandra's sister talked about them borrowing each other's clothes and stuff like that. She grew up partly in Australia and was described as popular and intelligent as a child, although not particularly academic. She seemed like a normal person. She had lots of different jobs, and she had a son in 1964 but was unable to care for him and gave him up for adoption. On the 7th of November, she was on the phone with her boyfriend at about 8 p.m. After that, she reportedly put the two youngest children to bed and, as you said before, offered to make Veronica a cup of tea at about 8:55. She went down to the kitchen in the basement and was murdered with a lead pipe. Her body was then put into a canvas mail bag, which I don't know what it is, but I'm guessing that it's a large bag.
Have you ever posted a parcel at the post office and seen behind the counter they've got those big old bags that are full of letters?
No, I haven't seen that.
Well, use your eyes.
Why would you have one in your home?
Because he's a lord.
Well, that explains a lot of the unexplainables, doesn't it? After this, Veronica claims to have gone down to the basement where she was attacked. She says that she realized that it was her husband after recognizing his voice when he shouted at her to shut up. When she defended herself by squeezing his balls, she said that John had given up fighting. She then asked him where Sandra was, and after being evasive about it for a while, he had confessed to killing her. Fearing for her life, Veronica said that she had offered to help John escape if he would just let her heal from her injuries first. So John had gone upstairs after this, sending his oldest daughter to bed. Veronica came upstairs and John had gone to the bathroom, which is when Veronica realized that this was her chance to escape. This is reportedly when she ran to the pub to get help. So Lord Lucan's movements are speculated to have been that when Veronica had escaped, he drove a borrowed car to a friend's house and rang her doorbell sometime between 10 and 10:30. But she had been alone in the house and decided not to answer the door, which I'm this person. In this story, this is who I am.
It's Halloween. Someone's knocking on the door. Oh, it must be an intruder.
Sometimes when I remember that it's Halloween and I haven't got candy, I just turn the lights off. Just in case. After this, she says that she had received a phone call, but that it was incoherent, and therefore she decided to just hang up. No, I decided that this is you. It's not me.
If you'd called me on the phone and it was incoherent and I hung up, we'd never be able to have a conversation.
Ah, that is true. But also, it would be you. Because if somebody called me incoherently, I would immediately be worried and anxious and be like, who called me? Okay, it's this person. I have to find out what happened to them. But no, this woman, legend, she was like, oh, I can't understand what this person is saying. So bye-bye.
Now, fuck this shit. I ain't got time for this.
Oh, So bloodstains were later found on her doorstep, and they did find that it contained the two blood groups consistent with Sandra's and Veronica's, no?
I don't think I read anything about that.
Oh, okay. I read that there was blood found on her doorstep later on, but then I was unsure about the blood groups.
I know about the blood groups. So Sandra was blood type B and Veronica was blood type A. So if it was a mix of those two, then it was likely to have come from them. And there was a similar blood mix on the Lucan household.
Okay.
So I'd imagine that it's probably the same mix.
Okay. He then called his mother, of course he did, because he's a spoiled little brat.
Mummy, I think I might have killed someone. Mummy, call the police commissioner, Mummy.
Or more likely, don't call the police commissioner, Mummy.
No, Mummy's got connections. Call the police commissioner, Mummy.
Probably true, because being a lord opens doors that we can only dream about. And told her that he had driven past his wife's flat and seen her fighting with a man in the basement, and that she should go there to pick up the children.
Mummy, be a dear, the children are in trouble. There's a murderer on the loose.
I left, but...
I saved my own skin, but I'm a lord. What do you expect, Mummy? Now put your life in danger, Mummy, by returning to the crime scene. Rescue my children for me, Mummy. I must go AWOL. Toodle-pip.
Toodle-pip. After this, he had gone to his friend in Sussex, Susan Maxwell Scott, who hadn't called the police. Susan was the last person to ever see Lord Lucan, as he reportedly backed out of her driveway in the early morning of the 8th. So now I'm going to ask you about the crime scene. I think somebody called the police in the pub, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, there was a blood-stained towel on Lady Lucan's bed. The staircase leading down into the basement was heavily blood-stained. There was a blood-stained lead pipe on the floor.
Oh, I thought that they found the lead pipe in the car that he borrowed from...
I'm getting there.
Oh, sorry. I'm getting ahead of myself again.
There were bloody footprints leading into the garden. There was Sandra's blood in the breakfast room, which I can only imagine is adjacent to the kitchen. Blood on pictures and portraits, in the stairwell that was dripping down onto the skirting boards, on the ceiling.
Jesus. Veronica must have gotten quite badly injured as well. If that was on the staircase, then I'm guessing it's Veronica's.
Good question.
I'm somewhat of a armchair detective myself. No, I'm just kidding.
When they investigated the crime scene, they managed to piece together a bit of a picture as to what had happened, given that forensics was not as advanced as it is now. So they determined that Sandra's attack had begun at the foot of the stairs in the basement, and that multiple blows had been inflicted while she was prone on the floor. Lady Lucan's attack started in the hall, and according to her blood typing spatter analysis, she did not make it to the kitchen.
I thought that she was walking downstairs in the staircase, but I'm guessing it was before the staircase?
Yeah, the attack started in the hall, and there was some banister damage on the staircase, which was obviously from her struggle. And the spatter on the ceiling indicated that she suffered multiple blows to the head whilst in that area. So overall, in the whole house, there were 6 incidences of mixed blood types being detected. Unfortunately, Lord Lucan's blood type is unknown, so they can't determine whether it was his blood mixed with his victims in all of them. And Lady Lucan had blood on her shoes that was not indicative of having walked through blood, and somehow the pathologist managed to rule out it being her own blood. So the theory is that it was a possible transfer of Lucan's blood.
She did say that she fought him when he attacked her, so it does make sense.
Mm-hmm. So they recovered the borrowed car, the Ford Corsair, and found that there were some fibers in that car that didn't originate from the car, that also matched fibers found from the house. And also that there were fingerprints in the Ford that matched fingerprints on items in Lord Lucan's house. So they can pretty much definitively say that at some point he was driving that car. Also in that car, they found another piece of lead piping.
Oh, yeah, that's where I was confused.
And that lead piping was also bandaged in the same way that the murder weapon was.
Oh, okay. So he probably had 2 pieces of pipe then.
Quite possible. So, Our Lady of Lucan had a total of 7 lacerations on her head that required 60 stitches.
Jesus, she managed to run to the pub.
She also had cuts and abrasions in the back of her throat. According to her testimony, before he told her to shut up and she'd identified him, he shoved 3 fingers down her throat to try and get her to be quiet.
Ew! What the hell?
She had the physical abrasions in her mouth and at the back of her throat to corroborate that. She also had bruising around the front and sides of her neck, which supported her saying that he tried to strangle her as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then poor Sandra, she had a total of 6 lacerations on her head, all determined to be from blunt force trauma. She had 3 distinct areas of heavy bruising. The first was around her eyes and her mouth. The second was on her shoulders. And the third was on her upper right forearm, which was very distinctly 4 finger-shaped bruises. So the theory there is that he grabbed her hard enough to bruise to try and get her where he wanted. So her cause of death was blunt force trauma to the head, but also they found blood in her lungs, which was probably from her facial injuries that she was inhaling.
Really brutal. And the theory was that he might have thought that Sandra was his wife. He might have hid in the basement.
Yeah, so supposedly he'd asked his children beforehand what day Sandra usually took off, and it was that day, but for some reason she'd changed that around. I think she'd gone to see her boyfriend on a different day or something.
Yeah, on a Wednesday.
Yeah, so she was working on Thursday rather than having that as a day off. So the theory being Lord Lucan was expecting it to just be his wife and children at home. So he hid in the basement, waiting for his wife to come down. Someone came down, he attacked, and it was a case of mistaken identity.
Yeah.
Either that or he was hiding in the basement for his wife and Sandra saw him.
Yeah, maybe.
And so then he felt like he needed to get rid of Sandra so that she wouldn't be able to be a witness.
Yeah. Was that what you had about the crime scene?
Yeah, apart from the window. Did you read anything about the window?
No.
Okay, so his main defense was that he was walking to his flat to get changed for some kind of posh dinner do, as they do. And as he was walking past the family home, he looked into the basement window and saw his wife being attacked by someone.
Yeah, I think he said that he drove by the flat.
I was fairly sure he was walking, but...
Okay.
So the interesting thing is, the only way that you could see into their basement through their window would be to be laying down on the ground.
I thought about that as well, because I was like, well, the flats in London, if they're underground, when you walk on the sidewalk,
They're right at foot level.
yeah, that's what I thought as well.
And also, on top of that, they had Venetian blinds installed on that window. Venetian blinds being the horizontal ones that slant at an angle, which means that even if he was laying down on the ground looking into this window, he still probably wouldn't have been able to see anything. And that was the basis of his defense, was that the only reason he was in the house was to save them from an assailant. And actually, it turns out that was completely bullshit.
Yeah, no surprises there. So John blamed everyone except for himself for the murder, writing in his letters that the fact that a crooked solicitor and a rotten psychiatrist destroyed me between them will be of no importance to the children. I gave Bill Shand the kid. Bill Shand kid? I don't know. It's a name. An account of what actually happened, but judging by my last effort in court, no one, let alone a 67-year-old judge, would believe, and I no longer care except that my children should be protected. And in another letter he wrote, V, for Veronica, has demonstrated her hatred for me in the past and would do anything to see me accused for George and Francis to go through life knowing their father had stood in the dock for attempted murder would be too much. When they are old enough to understand, explain to them the dream of paranoia and look after them like a spoiled little brat.
That last bit was not in the letter.
No. I was like, what last bit? No, the spoiled little brat bit. No, it wasn't.
Essentially, what he's saying is everybody's wrong apart from me. Listen to what I say.
Yeah, which is preposterous, I would say. So, a warrant for John's arrest was issued on Tuesday, the 12th of November 1974. The police suspected that John's friends from Eton was hiding him. Eton is a school for our international.
No, it's not. It's a pudding.
I thought it wasn't. I was like, shit.
It is. Eton Mess. It's a pudding.
Yeah. And a school, right?
Yeah, it's where all the prime ministers come from.
The pig fuckery ones. Was hiding him, helping him, or covering up for him, and the people in London's high society were not cooperating with police. Despite Lord Lucan having disappeared seemingly without a trace, the inquest into Sandra Rivet's death opened on the 13th of November 1974. Lord Lucan became the first member of the House of Lords to be named the murderer since 1760. And John's mother told the press that the inquest did not serve, quote, any useful purpose at all, unquote. And I would like to remind her that a woman died because she was murdered by your son.
Yeah, no purpose.
So John was declared dead in 2016 after a long legal procedure undertaken by his son to try to inherit his title as the Earl of Lucan and his seat in the House of Lords. Even though a detective who led an investigation into Lucan's disappearance 32 years after the murder said to the Telegraph that the evidence points towards the fact that Lord Lucan left the country and lived abroad for a number of years, Veronica stated that John was, quote, not the sort of Englishman to cope abroad, unquote. And she believed that John had committed suicide. And that being said, I should probably say that a number of people have come forward stating that they have spotted John or the Lord of Lucan abroad, but none have been verified as him. Most of them have been like other people who disappeared. I think they dredged the river or the ocean along the coastline or something looking for him, and they found like a judge.
Yeah.
Also, somebody went abroad and looked for him, and they were like, I found him, and then that was also another person who had disappeared.
It was a former member of parliament who'd faked his own death.
Yeah. Which is like you're looking for him, but then you found someone completely different. I don't know if he's alive. He might be. I wouldn't put it past his friends to be like, let's smuggle him out of the country.
Yeah, and I think if he didn't have his rich support background, then it would be a lot harder to rationalize him being alive, given that he left his passport and they looked into his bank accounts and they were untouched.
Mm-hmm. Although he was so deep into debt, so he didn't really have money to spend either way.
No, but when you've got rich friends in high places, it's a lot
Yeah.
easier to disappear than it would be for you or me to disappear and not touch any stash of money that we've got hidden away.
Yeah, true. But even in the 1980s, my dad disappeared.
Yeah, it's because he was a reporter and got lost in Afghanistan.
Yes. But also, I mean, like, it wouldn't be that hard in those days, but seeing as his friends ostracized one of their friends for seeing Veronica's injuries that were extensive and being appalled by Lord Lucan's behavior. And they were like, no, we're not going to be friends with you anymore. That says a lot about their character and what they could do, you know? They weren't cooperating with the police. The police stated that officially.
I think one of them said, I've no idea where he is, but even if I did, I wouldn't tell the police.
Yeah, and also the police said that they felt like they were being hindered by, quote, the Eton Mafia.
Gangsta!
I mean, like, it does make sense that it could be possible.
Yeah, he's probably hiding somewhere.
It doesn't sound ludicrous at all. It sounds highly plausible.
Oh, Ludacris, that's a rapper. You probably wouldn't listen to him.
You know what was funny? Flo Rida was in Eurovision this year.
Do you know what is also funny? The first time my grandmother on my father's side, God rest her soul, heard a Coolio song, it was when he was featuring another artist. From that point onwards, she thought that the person that sang that song was called Coolio Feet.
That's hilarious, yeah.
Oh, Grandma, you're so stupid.
Old people.
She was actually ridiculously intelligent. It's insulting.
Yeah. So that's the case.
We done diddly done.
We done done. Sandra featuring Juan. That's my supporting artist.
And the song is called Mess.
White girl drunk, that's the...
Oh, fun story. I had a bath yesterday, but then getting out, I saw my belly in the mirror. Ugh, I look pregnant.
I've been in that position, yes. Not pregnant, just looking pregnant.
Are you pregnant?
The guy in the vaccination spot, like, no, I just look pregnant. I'm not actually pregnant.
I'm sure if I actually let my hair down before you cut it, I could pass as a pregnant woman. Anyway, from tonight, I am giving up beer.
Oh, okay.
And we'll see after a month, either one, that I don't have the willpower to actually give up beer, or two, whether it actually makes any difference to my waistline or not.
What are you drinking tonight, then?
Beer. That's why it's after tonight.
I'm more on the wine and whiskey, and that might be my weight. But sometimes I like the party of a beer. It feels more refreshing, you know? And also, I love beer.
Sorry, I was drinking beer.
Okay, so thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of Midweek Murders. We'll see you in a fortnight. Bye-bye.
Goodbye, tally-ho, what?